Swoops World, where you get all you need to know about arts, culture, news, and happenings. Our number, if you want to give us a call tonight, is 562-912-3444.
It's David.
Hey, Dave. Well, we want to welcome David Ahearn to the show. David Ahearn started his career performing stand-up comedy at clubs across the country. He's appeared at such premier clubs in Los Angeles as the Laugh Factory, the Improvisation, and the Comedy Store. In 1997, he co-founded 4-Day Weekend. And Ahearn has been a host of 4-Day Weekend since its inception. How you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Doing very well. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about where you're from, and how you got started in comedy.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned I started out in stand-up. I actually grew up in Iowa. That's where I grew up, which is, as you know, a hotbed of show business activity. And I don't know what it was at a very young age. I just watched Johnny Carson, and that's kind of the guy that I always looked up to, like a lot of kids my age, and I wanted to start doing stand-up. So I remember I had a conversation with my father at 16 years old. I told him, I said, Dad, I'm thinking about going into comedy. And he looked at me like I had an alien head on my shoulders. and he literally said to me, he said, you can't go into show business. You don't know anyone in show business. And I said, Dad, I don't think that's a prerequisite to go into show business. But nonetheless, I knew at a young age that's kind of what I wanted to do. And after college, my brother was living in Texas at the time, and he said, this is at the end of the 80s, so he said, you ought to come down here. There's a lot of clubs down here. And I came down to Texas, and I started doing open mic nights in Texas at a place called the Backdoor Comedy Club. They'd let beginners go up, and I would go up as many times as I could, 4 nights a week, and I just tried to get as much stage time as I could. And, slowly that turned into getting opening gigs, where you'd go to the Funny Bone or places like that. And then eventually, I worked a lot of clubs in Texas, eventually moved to Los Angeles, lived in LA and worked all those clubs for a while, and kind of got beaten down by the whole LA scene. And when I came back from Los Angeles, my 2 business partners now, Frank Ford and David Wilk, I had just gotten back, and they said, we should start our own improv show. And I thought, oh, God, I don't want to do that. That sounds horrible. Because I came from the world of stand-up, and there is such a delineation between stand-up and improv that, because stand-ups hate improv, and people in improv love everything. And so I was part of that stand-up ilk, and I was just like, I don't want to do that. I think it's corny, and it's silly. And they go, no, just come on, it's going to be fun. We're going to start a show, and we're going to do it. And I told them, absolutely not, I'm not doing it. And so my friend David Wilk said, do me a favor, just get in the head shop. That's all I ask, is because it doesn't look like we have enough people for a comedy group, and we need one more head. So will you at least be in the head shot? And I said, okay, man, I'll take the head shot with you. And I went down and took the head shot, and the show was going to start on February 28, 1997, and I remember calling my friend Dave about 2 weeks before the show was. I've already taken the headshot by this point, and I said, hey man, I'm thinking about coming out and seeing the opening of your show in a couple of weeks. And he goes, well, you better, you're going to be hosting it. and I said, oh no, man, I told you I didn't want to do it. And he goes, hey, you're in the headshot, you have to do it now. And he goes, and he literally said, it's only for 6 weeks. Just do 6 weeks, and that's fine. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do 6 weeks. Well, at the end of 6 weeks, the show actually got a little bit of steam. They're in a little 99-seat theater called House on the Square in downtown Fort Worth, and for some reason, a writer named Todd Camp just happened into the show, and he wrote for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and he saw it and loved it and did a big spread in the paper, and that literally made the thing explode.
Wow.
So at the end of 6 weeks, the theater owner said, we want you guys to stay for another year. And I was like, I don't want to stay for another year. I was done after 6 weeks. I don't want to do this anymore. And again, my friend Dave is one of the most persistent people in the world. He just said, just stick around and just see what ends up happening. And so essentially what's happened is 17 years later, this thing is still carrying on, and it has been the single probably biggest break I've ever had in show business. I have to commend my friend Dave, because without him, I wouldn't be where I am right now today.
Wow.
So.
Well, is it, when your shows, I know this is audience participation, is it all improv, or is it sketch comedy? Is it a combination of both?
You know, it's a hybrid, essentially is what I like to call it. It is improvised, but we do have sketches. We have kind of some sketch work that we use improvisation within it. So it's kind of a hybrid of sketch and improv, but it's very, very interactive. Everything we do is, you know, we're using audience members. Obviously, we'll bring people down in the show. You know, we do things in our show where we'll use live interactive video and things like that. We'll use, the way we get suggestions a lot for our show is off a post-it note board or from index cards where we'll read lines of dialogue and things like that. So it's very interactive in that way.
Wow. Well, what's interesting, if you bring audience members up, I mean, improv has a set of rules, and that's what makes it work. When you bring in an audience member into the scene there, how does that work out for you?
You know what? I'll tell you what. We developed this show without even knowing what we were doing, and organically, without even knowing what we do, we kind of figured out a thing. What we do very, very slowly is we kind of acclimate the audience in. At the beginning of the show, it simply is, the way we'll start is that we may start by improvising from a newspaper, and we'll simply just say, call out a page number. Well, anybody can do that. Anybody can say a number. Right. And so, you know, they'll say out 3, 4, 5, and then I'll read a headline, we'll improvise from it, is one way we start our show. And then slowly, what we'll do is we'll ask them things, and then in the first act of our show, we'll bring a woman down on stage to improvise with us. And the reason why we always choose a woman, there's logic behind it, is because women are far more willing to actually have fun. Guys want to try to be cool and they will disrupt things. Guys are by their very nature are not improvisers, but women are very, very open. And so we'll bring a woman down, and we'll do things where we ask very simple questions. You know, where are you from? You know, what do you do for a living? You know, are you married? Who's your husband? We'll do things like that, and slowly you start to get the audience's confidence. Right. And by the end of the show, it is only at the end of the show, after doing an hour and a half, that we bring a guy down on stage. And because now the audience is on our side, they've watched a woman come down, they've watched how it's done, then guys learn to behave. This is what I've learned about men. It takes women to teach us how to behave. And
what's the percentage of the times you bring the guy up at the end of the show and he still screws it up? There's still a 25% chance he's going to be a jackass. there's a very, very solid chance he'll be a jackass. There's no doubt about it. But you know, by that time, you know, one thing that's really interesting about comedy, by that time you have the audience on your side. Yeah. So you can use the audience to kind of neutralize a guy who's trying to do that, and that's just kind of something we've learned through doing the show as long as we have. You know, basically the way our show starts is I come out to open the show. I always find a woman, you know, who's never been to the show, and what I'll do is I'll just ask her a few things. You know, where she's from. Basically, I'm trying to find a hook. You know, I'm trying to find something to kind of you know, that we can use. And the way we start our show is I'll talk to her, and then we improvise a song to start the show. Yeah. And that very, very, it starts to draw the audience in. They will have confidence then at that point. And I think that's the one thing that kind of paves the way for the rest of the show. And like I said, we always choose a woman, and we do that for a reason, because they're more likely to play along than a guy is. Yeah. So you guys, you started this 17 years ago, and you've been running. Has there ever been a break in the action? Have you gone 17 solid straight years?
17 solid straight years. Wow. We had never slowed down. We went from the 99-seat theater. We worked there for a year, and then in '98 we moved to a 212-seat theater, which is in the heart of Sunday Square. It's a beautiful theater that's been there. It was called the Caravan of Dreams at the time. There used to be a 750-seat music venue downstairs, which was one of the premier venues in Texas. And we were upstairs in the 212-seat theater upstairs. And eventually, all of this downtown is owned by a family. It's the Bass family, and they you know, these are billionaire philanthropists who have been absolutely the most amazing people, because they literally allow us to have this state-of-the-art facility for next to nothing, because they see the value in having live entertainment downtown. So it's really been a remarkable partnership that we've had with them.
Nice. How many of the original members are still in the troupe?
3. The 3 people who started it. Frank Ford is my partner, David Wilk is my partner, and myself. We started the show 17 years ago. Oliver Tull has been with us about 16 of the 17 years. He came a year into it, and Josh Roberts is the next senior person. He's been with us for about 11 years. And then we have a 5-level training center, so what we do is we're constantly looking into the training center and finding out, who is the potential talent coming out. So we're bringing people up constantly.
So
but it's just
it sounds like you're kind of like the groundlings.
Yeah, it is the groundlings. A lot of our business model is based a lot on what Second City did too, out of Chicago. Frank and Dave both studied at Second City. When I was in Los Angeles doing stand-up, they were going to Second City at that time, so they were really immersed in the improv world. Where I was out in Los Angeles working. I'm sure you guys know them well, the Laugh Factory and all those clubs, and then Hermosa Beach and places like that. So they were at Second City, and they really, I think both of them kind of had an inkling that, to get into the Second City system, that is such a perennial system that has been around for so long. It's going to be difficult to kind of break through that. So I think they kind of got the idea, maybe we could go to a place that doesn't have something like this, and we could start something on our own. And that was kind of the impetus for it.
Wow. Well, so 17 years, and it's improv. Staying fresh seems to me like it would be a big challenge. How do you guys address that? How do you keep it fresh? How do you, God, you hear about people like rock stars, you're like, God, I'm tired of playing the same damn song over and over. And you guys are doing comedy. How do you guys stay fresh? How do you keep them?
Well, you know what? I think it's improvisation. I think that, if you're doing a stand-up act for 17 years, that would be much more difficult than doing a show that's improvised, because the thing about doing this show is, even though, there's certain things that we're doing that are similar, every audience is different, and so every interaction is different. So there's a freshness to it. There's something that kind of keeps it alive, and it has a vitality to it that just telling the same jokes for 17 years wouldn't. I think that's part of what keeps us fresh and constant. And then, since you're working with an audience and news events change every single day, and the things going on in the world change, those things all affect the show as well. So you're going to get, not that I want to ever hear this again, but you're going to hear Miley Cyrus and Wrecking Ball. There's going to be something. You're going to. Every show for the last year we've heard That's What She Said from The Office. So those things change, thank God, and I think that's what keeps it fresh. I think that's what allows us to kind of, at least not get burned out from it.
Well, hey, and I wanted to go back to how you described how you guys got into, how you specifically got into this whole thing. That's a very similar story that I have about how Swoops World started. Now, we haven't been around for 17 years, but it was uncanny how similar. Well, no, just try it. It'll be okay. No, we'll just see how it goes.
Bring that up.
There's always one friend that drags another friend into it, reluctantly.
Yep.
I'm still here, so.
I'm still here. I don't know about 17 years, though. I'm not committing to that. That's time.
It reminds me of Larry David with Seinfeld, because he kept wanting to get out of Seinfeld. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And Seinfeld's like, let's just keep going with this. Let's see what happens. And so it seems like there's always one guy that wants to do it and one that doesn't. So all I can say is hang in there. Things are going to get better. If they're bad now, they're going to get better.
Well, you host every show, so do you still get to use your stand-up chops and not have to wholeheartedly commit to the improv stuff? You still get to do stand-up, huh?
Yes, thank God too. Yes, I get to wear a suit. I can look good, and I don't have to put wigs on, so it's terrific.
No wigs here at Swoops World.
I don't have to wear wigs, and that's my only saving grace through all of it.
Let's talk about some of the things that have branched off from this. You do a lot. You guys have written a book, and you do a lot of corporate events. And I've watched some of your videos with some of the corporate event stuff, and it's really interesting because you take the comedy aspect of it, but it still kind of gives them what corporations need. They have to have a reason to put these things together. So it's like some team building stuff or whatever. But you kind of incorporate all that into it, and tell us how you guys got started with the corporate events.
It was interesting because what happened was we had a CEO come to our show one time, and he really enjoyed it. And at the time, the basic philosophy of improvisation is you do everything on yes and. I mean, that's what improvisation is. You say yes to everything, and you build on it. And so what happened was somebody came to us after the show and said, hey, you guys are really good. Have you ever thought about doing corporate events? And at the time, quite honestly, we never had. But because of our training in improvisation, we said yes, and yours will be the first. And it literally was somebody who asked us to come in and do their event. And basically what we found was, these corporations have these meetings that are pretty dry and boring. And what the CEO wanted us to do was come in specifically and host these meetings and then do what we like to call interstitials, where, you're coming out, you're bringing speakers up and things like that. But at the same time, we'll do little sketches or little improvised skits for 5-7 minutes in between the meeting to kind of keep it fresh.
Right.
We always like to say we're the spoonful of sugar that makes the medicine go down. So what we found was it was a real natural bridge for us because it was exactly what we do. I mean, I do quite a lot of hosting at events like this, as does David Wilk does quite a bit too. And we found that we could come in and host these meetings and bring the rest of 4-day weekend in, and then we could do show elements throughout their meetings, and it became very, very successful, far more than I could have ever imagined it would. And one thing that's really interesting, guys, is that on the corporate circuit, nobody talks about this, but you will see people we have worked with Dana Carvey so many times, the band Train so many times. There are so many Hollywood entities that are out doing these things because the money is so good. It's just never talked about.
That was the thing I was going to ask you about, because I actually heard somebody being interviewed on another show, and I can't remember who it was. One of the comedians, but the host says, "Why do you do so many of these corporate things?" He says, "Corporate things play great." He says, "I try to book as many corporate things as I can each year." He says, "Yeah, I got to kind of watch what I say, as opposed to what I do on a comedy stage." He says, "But he says it keeps the kids fed and the mortgage paid."
It's really unbelievable, and obviously the money is there's a lot of money in it, and everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
It's not really, like I said, it's not really talked about, but a lot of people do these things, and quite honestly, you get to meet a lot of fascinating people from doing it. What happened? We just did a thing. I guess it's been 2 years ago. We're doing it coming up again. We were doing this event for a financial institution, and at the time, President Bush was the keynote. He was going to be the keynote, so we're hosting this event, and the Secret Service is coming in a couple days prior to make sure everything is cool. And the producer had told us, "You are not going to get to meet the president. Only 2 people get to meet the president." And we kiddingly said, "Well, when we do really well and he wants to meet us, what do we do?" And they said, "Well, if the president says he wants to meet you, then by all means, you'll meet him." And so what we did is we came out, we did like 15 minutes up front at this financial meeting for this bank, and it went exceptionally well. And we came off stage, and there is a giant man. I mean, this guy is the size of a Coke machine, and then this tiny little guy right by him, and he said, "President Bush would like to say hello to you." And we're like, "Okay." So I said, we were told we're not allowed to talk to him, and they said, "Well, he wants to talk to you." So we went over, and President Bush is standing there, and he said, "How are you guys?" He goes, "You guys are pretty funny." And we ended up talking to Bush for about 10 or 15 minutes, and it was a very odd conversation. He said, "Where are you guys from?" I said, "We're from the Dallas-Fort Worth area." He goes, "So am I." And I said, "Oh, I hadn't heard that. You probably need to get a good PR guy, because I have not heard anything about that." But it's from doing events like these corporate things that you meet people like that. We did something with Colin Powell recently, Rudy Giuliani, We did an event. Here's a really fascinating story. We did an event for Southwest Airlines. They had called us and they asked us if we would come in and do some team building with them to do our Yes and seminar with their training staff. And at the time, Southwest Airlines said, we don't have the full amount of money to pay you, which is classic because God knows Southwest Airlines is not a big corporation. I said, if only you guys charged for bags, maybe you'd have enough money to pay us. So they said they didn't have enough money to pay us, and we said, well, maybe we can offset, because, we're yes and people, so we don't want to say no to things. So we said, well, maybe we can find a way to offset the money you can't pay us through advertising or something like that. And they said, one thing we could possibly do is that we have a magazine called Spirit Magazine, and we're thinking about doing a business story about how improvisation can help businesses. Maybe we could get our writer to do a story on you guys, and that might be something that you guys might be interested in. So we agreed to do it, and what happened was we did the training, they did the story, it went into Spirit Magazine, and Linda Sanchez, who's a Democratic congressperson from California, was taking one of her little puddle jumpers in California, and she read it in the magazine, the story on us on Yes and she went back to John Larson, who is the chairman of the Democratic caucus, and she threw the magazine on his desk and said, I bet you don't have the guts to bring these guys in because our meetings are boring and they suck and we need to do something fun. And so he said yes to it. He said, let's do it. And literally within 2 weeks, we went to Congress and taught our Yes and seminar. Nancy Pelosi was sitting right in the front row. Biden was there. Obama was there. Obama came in later, but he was there. And it was the most surreal experience in the world. And at the time, they had a 9% approval rating, Congress did. And now I'm proud to say they have an 11% approval rating. So you're welcome, America. We did it.
So he basically said, yes, and let's get them here in 2 weeks.
Yes, that's exactly right. But my point is that that's where those corporate things have led us. They've led us to places that we probably would not have got to without them.
Right.
It really has. It's been a pathway of things that have been really pretty amazing experiences. And the interesting thing is that right after, the year after, Stephen Colbert did the caucus after us the next year.
But they didn't get another bounce though. They got the 5% off for you guys.
Yes, yeah, we did it. Stephen Colbert did nothing for them. Nothing.
Oh yeah, well, take that.
Yeah.
How did the book come about?
Same way. Somebody came up to us and said, you ought to put these books, the principles of these in a book. And at the time, again, we said we never thought about it. But when somebody brought this up, I thought that's actually a really good idea. And, and then we just literally sat down and started working on it. We thought we'll put these principles into a book and see what happens. And we put them down and people were interested in it. And we wrote the book. I mean, it wasn't so much a 4-day weekend, especially for me, wasn't even planned. It just kind of happened organically. People would bring something up and would say, we never even considered it, but we will think about it. That even came from, doing commercials. People would say, you guys ought to be in commercials. We started doing that. A training center. You ought to have a training center so you can teach other people to do this. Again, we never really considered it until somebody said it. And once they did, we thought, well, let's do it. Let's give it a try.
Well, let's talk about real quick. There's a station idea. You're listening to Swoops from the Talkstar Radio Network. We're here with David Ahearn of a 4-day weekend. The training center aspect of it, are you teaching that? Or did you hire teachers? Is the members of the troop teaching the classes? And how do people do they have to audition to get in, or how does that work out?
Well, we used to early on. The main cast, Frank Dave and I used to teach many years ago, and I say many years, 5, 6, 7 years ago. We used to teach. Unfortunately, we're too busy now to do that. However, we do have a couple of cast members who are on the main stage who do teach. We have a director of the training center. Her name is Tabitha Munn, who leads all of that. And then we have several teachers who've gone through our system who have performed with us who now do the bulk of the teaching. So, and basically, at level 1, we're pretty accepting of almost anybody who wants to come in and try to take level 1. You can do that. At level 2, we have after level 2, we have that's when you have to audition to try to get into 3, 4, and 5.
How many students do you max out at?
We try to keep it at 12 to 15, and we usually have 7 or 8 classes going on simultaneously throughout the week. So and that's all levels 1 through 5. We'll usually have a couple level 1s going, a couple level 2s, and then we'll have a 3, 4, and a 5 going.
Is it all aspects of is it strictly improv, or is it sketch stuff, or cold reading?
It goes to later things go to sketches, character work, things of that nature. At the beginning, it's the basic tenets of improvisation. Level 2 is just the more advanced levels of improvisation. And 3, 4, and 5 becomes sketch work, character work, things of that nature.
The fun thing about I enjoyed about improv is once you kind of learn the rules and kind of stick with them, because lots of times halfway through you screw up, you mess up, and you forget to say yes and whatnot. But once you got it, you can have some pretty good sketch scenes going on there for a little bit there.
I really think, and I tell this to people all the time, if you're a writer, if your goal is to be a writer, I don't think there's anything better than improvisation to teach you to be a writer. And the reason why is because in improvisation, the things you teach, every scene is who, what, where, and why. That's the information you're trying to get out in any scene. Who are you? Where are you? What are you doing? And why are you doing it? And the thing I tell writers all the time is, the reason why that's so important is because in your scripts, you got to get to that inciting incident very, very quickly. You have to know, who are these people and why are they doing it? And once we know that, as an audience member, we'll go on a ride with you. And the quicker you get to that as a script writer, the more likely you are that you're going to sell your script, or you're going to make your script, and it's going to be good. And that's what improvisation teaches you. So anyone who comes to me and says, I don't want to be a performer, that's not what I want to do, I want to be a writer, I'm like, take the classes, because it's going to teach you to write.
Right. Excellent. How many shows are you putting on a week?
We do four in-house in the theater, and then this week alone, we've had four private shows out on the road. We're all over the country. So we just did Ellison Technologies, which is a big machine thing. So our in-house is 4 a week. We do 2 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and then we're on the road throughout the week. So we do about 200 in-house a year, another 100 corporate things. So we do about 300 a year. We've done, I think we're more than 5,000 shows now that we've done.
Wow. When it comes to the corporate events, do most corporations kind of give you free will, or do they say, hey, we really need our employees to kind of, concentrate on this aspect of the work? Or can you kind of, do you have to come up with a different presentation for each corporation, or is it can you use some of the similar things with different groups?
Well, you keep a lot of things. It depends specifically what you're asking. If we go in for a training, which is different than us doing a live corporate show, because the live corporate shows it's their national sales meetings, and we're basically doing a show. But in terms of training, what we usually do is we try to get with them. They will tell us what their needs are, and we will modify our training to try to suit their needs. But essentially, yes and is the core of what we're teaching.
Right.
And, it's basically, we're teaching the same thing, but it depends if the corporation, is trying to focus on communication, teamwork, what is the aspect that they're looking to get, and then we can tailor it within that.
Wow. Sounds like, people kind of have the idea, you do your show and you got to go do this corporate event, but there's a lot of time and effort and work put into each one of these things that you have to do.
It's amazing. Let me tell you something. I'm on conference calls a lot. and every conference call is the same. It's that we're a very conservative company, but we're not afraid to let our hair down. I swear to God, every company says that. We're conservative, but boy, when we let loose, we're really crazy. So we run into that a lot.
Yeah.
I bet.
Now, how long have you guys been doing your show?
We started in December of 09.
Of 09?
Yes. So.
And how did you come about doing yours? Like, what was the impetus for you guys starting your show?
Man, look at this. We just became the interviewees.
Well, you've been asking me questions, now I want to know some answers.
Well, it's kind of like what you said with you guys. Peter and I had done several things together, and I had done a little radio in college and such, and I do some acting, so I was on set with some friends of mine because I actually became friends. We had just met, and I had mentioned that I was thinking about getting into radio and trying to figure out what I should do, how I go about it. And one of the guys goes, "I got a radio show. It's on the internet." I said, "Really? How do you do that?" He says, "You just got to do this. It's simple, blah, blah, blah." So I came home and gave Peter a call. Says, "Guess what we're going to be doing?" He says, "What?" He says, "We're going to do a radio show." He goes, "You're going to do a radio show?" I'm not doing a radio show. But
hey, I know the feeling. Now, have you guys found, has podcasting changed the radio business substantially, do you think?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I think it gives, well, first of all, it gives an opportunity for anybody who really wants to do it to do it. I think what happens with, and you probably know this with anything, a lot of people jump into it but don't realize the commitment it takes to do something like this on a consistent basis, so they drop right back out. But it does allow a lot of people to get their voice out, and a lot of people to have an opportunity to share whatever they want to share with the World Wide Web. And also it gives you some kind of, on the internet you can speak a little bit freer. You're not really at this point under the guidelines of the FCC. So, if you want to drop a couple words here and there, you're free to do it. And and for us, it's really easy. We don't have to be in some major studio with millions of dollars worth of equipment. We have a couple laptops and some. We got decent mics, but we got a couple laptops and a little board and a pod camera, and away we go. So.
Yeah, it reminds me because that was the Dallas-Fort Worth area in the late '90s. There was such an influx of comedy groups. It was. I'm telling you, my timing in comedy could not be worse because I started doing stand-up in the late '80s when the boom was over, and when I got into doing an improv show, it was so ridiculously booming. There were shows everywhere. There must have been 17 shows in Dallas when we started. And what we did was we said, you know what, everybody's in Dallas. Why don't we move to Fort Worth, which is, it literally is 40 minutes west of Dallas. And no one was out here. People were like, you guys are insane. Why would you go out to Fort Worth? And we said, well, because nobody's out there. And the interesting thing is that we are the only game left in town. Everything else is gone.
Yeah.
Those other 17 shows are gone. And what I think that happens is that quality ends up winning out. Even though there may be a huge influx of shows, the best shows end up winning out.
Yeah, I think it it shows, but the amount of effort you put in, the talent you bring on, and what you deliver to the people, whether or not they're going to come back or not.
Consistency.
You got to be consistent. And a lot of when you talk about the radio shows, we've seen a lot of people come and go because some of the shows were really pretty good, but they just weren't consistent. And it's just like a restaurant. If you don't have your doors open the same time, the same day each week, then people aren't going to know you're open and they're not going to show up.
That's been a philosophy of ours since the very beginning. We never miss any of our weekend shows. No matter what, we're always back Friday and Saturday for our 7 to 10 shows. We don't ever miss it. We never shut down. We are there every single weekend because, the minute you become inconsistent, people stop showing up.
Absolutely.
That has been our philosophy of ours.
Nice. What kind of prices does it cost to get in to see one of your shows?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What was that?
Ticket prices for your shows.
Oh, tickets are $20 plus tax.
Yeah.
Piece of cake, man. Run. Yeah, no big deal. $20. We like to keep it. That's kind of our sweet spot. Is we could people go, God, you could raise your prices, but we want to be able to reach a wide swath of people. And sure, I mean, you could make tickets more expensive, but then you're going to get all middle-aged white people. You know, I mean, seriously, you're not going to get anything else. So we've always kind of kept that as our sweet spot, and it's worked for us.
That's very cool. And you just mentioned that. I mean, what are your demographics?
It goes from 18 to 85.
Nice.
It is really, and it depends on the show. Like the place you'll see the most diversity is the Saturday 7:30 show. It's primarily people on their dates, you know, middle-aged people on their dates, but you will see everything from, you know, a pair of 18-year-old kids coming out, and then you'll see the octogenarian in the front row who can't hear anything, but seems to be enjoying it. I mean, I don't know what, I've seen them fall asleep and they say they have fun. I don't know what they're singing, but
comfortable chairs.
But we are happy to take their money.
come on back for another nap.
I will tell you guys an absolutely funny story. There was a guy who used to stand outside our theater, and the guy must have been 160 years old. And he always used to ask us, like, what do you guys do? And we said, we have this show. It's a comedy show. And he's like, I'm going to come one day. And finally one day I just said, you know what? I go, hey, here's a ticket. Just come out. And the guy comes out to the show, and he sits in the front row. And we're about midway through the show. And I swear to God, he stood up midway through the show, and he looked at us and he said, you didn't tell one joke. And he waved his hand, and he walked out the door. I don't know if he was waiting for Henny Youngman or what, but even his free ticket, he was like, I wasted my time, and he was so mad, and he walked out the door and never saw the guy again. I said, perfect. That's perfect. That's a demographic. Now, do you guys have to deal with, you know, one thing that we find that's the most challenging thing right now on this stage is online reviews. Like, we will get 99% great online reviews, and there'll be one person with a bad one. And I'm talking about, like, on TripAdvisor and things like that. Do you guys have to deal with that, too?
No.
Perfect.
Our demographics just don't have time to write reviews, good or bad. We've actually begged for a few reviews.
we live in a world where everyone has a voice now. Yeah. Everybody. You know, everyone has a voice and everyone has an opinion. So that's always fun to deal with. You always love to see the guy Skeeter83 who gives you a bad review. You're like, really? A guy named Skeeter is giving us a bad review? Really? Okay. All right, Skeeter. Sorry we didn't please you, Skeeter.
It took him 2 trips to the computer to finish that. You know that. Mom calling him up out of the basement for dinner.
yeah, no kidding.
Hey, David, we tried to cover a lot, but we want to make sure we cover all the things you wanted to talk about. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't yet talked about?
You know, I tell you what, like I said, I mean, we've had an amazing run. I feel so fortunate to be part of the show. Like I said earlier that I did not want to be a part of it. This thing has been one of the most amazing experiences ever. I mean, we got the opportunity to meet a couple presidents, Colin Powell, like I said, all these people. It's really been a remarkable thing. And for me, what it taught me more than anything else was that when I was younger and doing stand-up, I would say no to everything without even thinking about it. And, you know, just taking the improv philosophy has changed my life in the most profound ways possible. Literally just by saying yes and. I mean, it took a very cynical stand-up and showed me a way of thinking that was different than a stand-up's way, and it made me far more successful than I would have ever been continuing the way I was 20 years ago. It's really been an amazing run. It's been great, and I feel very fortunate, and I have great people who surround me at the show who make me better, and, you know, David Wilk and Frank Ford and Oliver Tull and Josh Roberts and Ray Sharp, all these guys are amazingly talented, and I feel so fortunate to get to work with them every day.
Outstanding. What's your website again?
FloridaWeekend.com. FOURDAY.
And all your links to Twitter and Facebook and all their.
All of it. By the way, you guys do a great job of tweeting, man. I gotta give you props.
Thank you.
You guys know how to throw down a tweet, man.
All I have is 140 characters in me, so that works.
Dude, man, my phone was blowing up. I was like, "Whoa, what's up, Swoopy?"
Is your book available to anybody, or do you have to?
It is. It's no. It's on Amazon.com. It's The Art of Improvising.
Zen, right?
Zen at the end. Yeah, it's on Amazon.
All right. Well, David, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And we have to make it out to. Is it Fort? Where are you guys at again?
We're in Fort Worth, and anytime you guys want to come out, we'll roll out the red carpet for you.
All right, man. We'll have to make it out there one day.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate having me on.
Thanks a lot. A pleasure.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Good night. Best of luck.
David Ahearn of 4-Day Weekend. Check them out at FOURDAY weekend.com. Pretty cool.
Sounds like a really cool event.
Yeah.
Cool stuff to, and I'm not even normally an improv type person, It's just not my thing. But just hearing him talk about it sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fun show, a real fun show.
I've seen some of their YouTube stuff, and they're funny. And then I've seen some of the YouTube of their corporate events, and if you've ever had to go to, I'm sure you had to go to these corporate.
Everybody's had to.
They really bring a bit of relief to the day that usually involves. So.
Yeah.
Get a chance to check them out. We're going to take a quick break and then come back here. It'll be about time for Brewskis when we return. You listen to the Swoops on the Talk Story Radio Network. This is Danny Rosner, and this is called Hitchhiker. Back up to this.